We've been well briefed on the Rhone's history and the course of events that led to her sinking. The 20 minutes it takes to motor across the channel to Salt Island gives us just enough time for the first dive brief of the day. The BVI were among the first in the Caribbean to establish marine parks and install permanent mooring systems. They are protected by law, and the government takes them very seriously. The moorings were placed and are maintained by the BVI National Parks Trust. They are patrolled by the crew of the Rhone Ranger. And now, it's time to pay our respects to RMS Rhone. She is a magnificent sight even now after more than 128 years under the sea. We make this dive with a great degree of reverence and respect. We are diving back in time, and as we proceed, the history briefing is still fresh in our memories. The story unfolds as we dive. In February 1865, England's Royal Mail Steam Packet Company christened the RMS Rhone. She was a product of the Millwall Iron Works, world-class shipbuilders of the day. RMS stands for Royal Mail Steamer. The Titanic, incidentally, was an RMS. The Rhone was 310 feet long at the waterline with a beam of 40 feet. She was driven by the latest in steam engines. Her power plant generated 600 horsepower, propelling her at the unheard-of speed of 14 knots. Combined with a crew which included stewardesses, her capacity was upwards of 300 souls on board. The Rhone and other steamers plied the trade and mail routes of the West Indies and South America. They would take on cargo, mail, and passengers in Southampton, England, bound for the Spanish Main. Twice a month, all the ships would gather in St. Thomas Harbor to make their connections. The larger vessels would rendezvous with smaller schooners, which would in turn ship their cargo and passengers to final destinations all over the Caribbean, from Kingston to Cartagena, from Mobile to Maracaibo. The steamers would then provision for the return crossing to England. It was during such a transfer that the Rhone and a smaller sister ship, the Conway, found themselves in Peter Island's Great Harbor on the morning of 29 October 1867. The skipper of the Conway was Captain Hammock. The Rhone was under the command of Captain Robert F. Woolley. Owing to an epidemic of yellow fever in the Caribbean, Woolley and Hammock had decided to take on stores at Peter Island rather than risk infection at the more densely populated seaports. By first light, the crews were already hard at work. A falling barometer suggested a turn in the weather, and although precautions were taken, work was allowed to continue. The skippers thought that this must be an early norther. After all, hurricane season had been over for weeks. At about 11 o'clock, the ship's barometers suddenly, dramatically dropped. With dark clouds, howling winds, and no warning, a hurricane blasted in from the north-northwest. Running at full steam, the two ships weathered the first half of the storm without major damage. But knowing that the wind direction would shift as soon as the eye passed, the decision was made to weigh anchor and make for the comparative safety of Rhode Harbor across the Sir Francis Drake Channel. For their safety and convenience, most of the passengers of the Conway were shuttled to the Rhone. The Conway then weighed anchor and made for Tortola. The eye of the hurricane passed quickly. Heavy winds and high seas, now from the south-southeast, caught the Conway, shearing her stack and ripping away both masts. She was driven ashore, but all hands reportedly survived. The Rhone was not so lucky.